mortise and tenon joint. And the cool thing about a bridal joint is it has a nice contemporary look. It looks nice. You see the end grain up here on the tenon board, and the mortise board pops through in the center. So nice clean joint. You've seen it all over on chairs we've been looking at, on desks where they wrap it around. The nice thing is that it has a ton of glue strength. So there's all that long grain to long grain connection. And so where this comes in handy, this is kind of a thicker version. I don't know, this could be for a lot of things, a nightstand or something, but if you were to make, and this one's old and sort of not what it used to be, but if you were to make some stiles and rails, so we have our groove running through to fit the panel, and then the joint itself, so a ton of surface. Now, the width of this is the same as pretty much what you're dealing with on your toolbox, right? Where the bridal joint is hidden, so it's a very forgiving joint on this project. If things don't look that cute, it's okay. But a lot of times people like to keep it exposed on door frames, on a lot of things, and the benefit to it is that some people don't like the width of stiles and rails. Like, they don't like them this wide. They want them thinner, and maybe 1.25 inches wide or something. So almost more like think of this width, but with that thickness. And that's where a bridal joint can really come in handy when you still have a panel you have to fit in, because you don't have the length or width to do a traditional mortise and tenon, right? You have to go 3/8 down, so you have that short grain wall. You can only go so deep with the bit, so that's where this makes a lot of sense. The glue up of this is a little more involved than you think. Usually that's what happens with joints that are more simple to cut, are often harder to glue up, and that's where the disaster kicks in. Because when you have a frame like this coming together, you need to get some pressure here and here and here and here and here, right? Because that glue is going to swell things up. It's going to want to push it out. So you need to often make clamping pads. Take thin stock and just the best thing to use for clamping these corners is not one of these. They're just not quite strong enough, but it's those F clamps, and those F clamps like to dent wood. So you want leather or cork or more wood to increase the surface area when you're clamping it down, okay? All of that being said, let's talk about how to cut it. Pretty straightforward. I like to do it with a table saw. I had someone that really wanted to do it by hand, and it was final project, and they bought all these special Japanese saws to do the whole thing. And I was like, all right, we can lay it out, and you just got to saw straight. Well, you have to saw straight for like 2 inches, right? That's a little harder than dovetails. And finally, like last week of class, I was like, let me just show you the table saw. And she was like, whoa, okay. And then it was fit in about 10 minutes. So very quick work. The other cool thing about running, when we're doing a panel glue up with a bridal joint is, remember when we did the haunched mortise and tenon, and we had some test stock, and we kept taking our calipers, and on that test stock we would run the 1/4 inch groove, and then be checking, because our material was 5/8, we were checking for 3/16 and 3/16, right? And you had to nudge the fence over here, and it took a minute. Well, the cool thing with the bridal joint is it's all based on a center axis. So I can get my dado stack set up without the L fence, right? I can get that set up with a 1/4 inch dado stack and raise it a 1/4 inch because that's what the plans say. You can raise this however you need, and get it pretty close center. And let's say my triangle is into my fence. I can run that 1/4 inch dado through, flip it, and run it again. And even if it's a little wider and my walls are a little thinner, as long as I have enough heft on here, I'm dead center every time. every time. And then that's going to make the setup for cutting my joinery a lot easier, because I'll be able to run a cheek, flip it around, run the cheek again, and I'm dead center with everything. So that's how you want to run the groove for this joint, okay? And which I've already done, so I'm not showing you that. You know how to do that, but rip it and flip it. That's how we're doing that. Now, could you grab my marking gauge right there behind the router? We need to take into account the groove. You can do bridal joints without a groove. This is what this looks like. And, thank you. And what I would do is set the blade to the width of my stock, right? So however, I want my tenon to be as tall as I want it to travel through that component. So however wide this is, that's how much I'm raising the blade. So holding it up there, getting it to that height. You can do bridal joints with 2 different thicknesses. You just have to account for that. And so it's a little more thinking, but it's really not that much once you get it all laid out. For us, it's all the same width, except we do have this groove. So I like to cut the mortise first, which is, I'm going to try and make the exact width of my groove. So in that sense, it's the same as the haunch again, right? The haunch tenon. And you can see, let me find the one that's easy to pull out. That my tenon is not totally the height of my full width, because I have that groove traveling through. So to run my mortise here, I actually need to first set the height of the blade to the inside of the groove, the bottom of the groove, right? So from here to whatever that measurement is there. That's how deep my mortise goes, okay? So I'll do that first. I'll try and hold it mostly on the cast iron. Find the apex. Now try and get that pretty close if you can. The other thing is that there's a couple different table saw blades that make this even friendlier to do. They're flat top table saw blades. So the ones we cut with, your sort of general table saw blade, gives you that kind of V shape because it's severing the fibers and all that. And you can get them ground by companies all over to get it nice and flat. And that is, if you're doing this for a lot of projects, it is totally worth the $100 and so bucks to get that in your toolkit. The other thing you can get is, some people like to do these with the dado stack, right? They sort of run everything at once, and you can get something called a box joint table saw blade, and that's also a flat top blade. When you bring the 2 blades together in this orientation, it's a 1/4 inch wide, and when you bring the blades like that, it's 3/8 wide, and that's all it does. Pretty neat though. We can do, and that being said, we can do everything with a regular table saw blade. I don't want to blow out my material, so what you can do is take your marking gauge, and I can set it from the bottom right to where I raised that blade, sort of, the bottom of my groove. And I'd probably do this more delicately at a vise in reality. And I can come from the back here and just strike, about where that's going to be in the center. Now, hopefully, ideally you have a few swipes of the plane. You can get rid of those marks. I'm not going all the way across. I'm just going, I know the mortise is only in the middle, so I don't need to go all the way across. Okay. We have 2 tenoning jigs here. I used this one yesterday. I'm going to use this one today because, just find the one you like to use. And this one goes in here like this. It slides. Have we used this yet?
No.
Okay.
I like it though.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
So, where did I just put that? here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the groove facing towards the table saw blade because that's exactly, those are my references. I'll bring this on the cast iron, bring this down, clamp it. Normally I'd be putting, you can see how it's all chewed up here. I would put like a piece of MDF, double side tape it so you have a zero clearance. I'm just going to keep moving, but that is not best practice in reality. Clamp this down. So now that's down, and I can sort of hold it and slide it, okay? I'm going to bring this over, and I'll look for a tooth that's veering in this direction. This again is it's kind of forgiving, it's our template, right? So I don't need to be so clean, but I do want to hit those walls. I'll show you sometimes when you're too in the center and you rip and flip it, you get this sort of like stair step where the groove ends and then you're in your material. Let me see if I can get that so I can show you what that looks like. Okay, so let's say I'm about there. So notice where I set my marking gauge, it stopped those fibers right there. So I didn't tear out, right? And especially if this is an exposed door, you don't want that. Be a major bummer. The second thing is I actually want to open this mortise a little more. If you see, there's like a little bit of a step in there, right? See that? Right? And if I can just get those walls nice and clean, I know that I can have that tenon travel through without it being interrupted. Otherwise, I might have a gap. So I need to nudge the fence out just a hair, just a skosh. And it's just, have practice boards, trial and error. Once you find this position, you're going to want to run all of your mortises. So the style, I forget which it is on the plans, but both your stiles are mortise boards or both your rails are mortise boards, right? So it's the same. This is the same on this end. Little more.
The Nino skosh.
Now we're pretty good. That's no step. No step. Okie dokie. So now I would do that to all the mortises. I'd make all my mortises right now. Sometimes there's a little bit of scallop left in the middle. You'd want to run your outside walls first, and then you would tap the fence over to get rid of that. Sort of like when we do the dovetails. You have that triangle of waste you can get rid of. Same idea. So I do it to all sides, and now I want to reset it. I need to reset two things: the position of the fence and the height of the blade. The height of the blade now needs to be the full width of my component, right? Because I want a really clean, shoulder here. So I need to raise that up so it joins tight. So I'm going to get this out of the way. And bring this up. That feels good. And I can set my marking gauge again to the thickness. Ideally, you hit your, the whole thing with this is clean shoulders. You really want clean shoulders. So you want to sever those long grain fibers. And that. And cherry's pretty nice to do all this with, but if you're working with oak or hickory, it's going to tear out. You gotta.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are you doing hickory?
We're doing white oak.
Oh, white oak, right. Sorry, I
Yeah.
remember your wood.
You're messing with Mojo. Come on.
Okay. Get this clean. And a common mistake too is people don't set this on the cast iron. When they're in the zone, they're like, cool, I'm set where I am, and then they kind of do that, or things get funky. So just make sure you're bottoming out every time. So blade's raised where I want it, and I don't want to bind my offcut, so which means I don't want to cut this cheek first. I want to cut the outside cheek, okay, so everything can fall away from the blade. I don't want to get it all bound up between the fence and the jig. So I'm going to bring this here, find a tooth veering out in this direction again. Actually, this way.
Make sure you use your test piece first.
Okay. So there are two. Ideally, I'm not too loose first. See what that does.
Uh-oh.
So again, I'm going to rip, flip. And so I don't know. There's no way for me to test right now if this is going to fit or not. So I'm going to go to the bandsaw. I'm not going to cut right at my shoulder. I'm just going to nip it off. And guess what these are? Shit. Really good clamp pads when you're gluing it all together. Okay. So we see how that was established. We already ran the groove. So, that's the height of it is established for where my mortise is. Let's see how we do it. So I am starting to go in, but that is too tight. It's too tight. You can get a false fit with bridal joints because what's happening is it's actually flaring out. We don't want that, especially when you get yellow glue on here or any glue. It's gonna expand and sort of sponge up. So you've got to be aware of it. Okay, that'll mess with your fit. So I need to get it back in here. And I need to just every amount I'm taking off on one side, I'm taking off on the other. So keep that in mind. See what that does. actually, it's a little looser than I'd like, right? So it would be nice if, the nice thing about if it is a little loose, for some reason you did your test pieces and they worked, but it's a hair loose, you can get that clamping pressure on there and it will look good. As long as it's not, you know, sort of comically swimming down. You can clean it up with some sanding and some planing, but ideally it gets that fit where, you know, this just sort of hangs there. But you'll feel when it's flaring it, you know, and if it's really doing it, it'll tear the cheeks off. So let's just say I got a fit that's a little cleaner than this. What I would do now for the shoulders is I would do all my tenon boards again, and that, you know, that's where that, you can see where the tooth of the blade kind of does this. You know, it's not a flat top blade, right? It's a really, and you want that joint to come together clean. You can always put a little wedge in there, but if you don't have to, it's nice. So you may need to come back through with your chisel, with a 1/4 inch chisel to like clean up the mortise side. Okay. So then once you cut those, come back to our trusted miter gauge. This is totally in the wrong spot, right? This needs to be over here. This is sort of a different operation. But you would raise the blade to just so it's not, you know, hitting your tenon, and you bring the fence over, you bottom it out so your marking gauge line, or you know, where you want your shoulders to meet, and you butt it up against the fence, cut it, flip it, and cut it, right? And you should ideally have nice, clean, square shoulders, because you're also checking that for square before you actually go for it, right? So does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So pretty cool, and like honestly, a pretty quick operation once you get it all, because you mill it all up to length, right? So there's kind of less numbers involved. So that's the bridal joint. I want to show you guys one other thing about